Howdy, I am Stephen Mullins of the Cooperative Institute of Meteorological Studies, working in cooperation with the Weather Service's Warning Decision Training Division. Let's begin with a little history of the Weather Service and social media. It was 13 years ago that Facebook was created, and 11 years ago that Twitter was created, complete with its abbreviated spelling if you know your history. 8 years ago, a service assessment noted Weather Service employees were using social media to gather information, the first instance of this I have been able to find. 6 years ago, the Weather Service started testing social media and made Facebook operational 1 year later and Twitter operational 2 years later. Offices have been gaining followers since, and it's become important enough that here we are at a Broadcasting and Communications Joint Conference, and the social media session is on the morning of the first day. Reflecting on this history, it's safe to say that social media has had some early adopters within the Weather Service. They were pretty excited about it. So excited that one of our patron saints, Tim Bryce of the El Paso office, began and led a grassroots training webinar series in 2012, known as the NWS Think Social series. And its goal was to answer one big question. This is a big deal. How do we use it? Nearly 2 years into the NWS Think Social series, towards its end, Jonathan Kurtz and Michael Scotton from the Norman office conducted a webinar to address a truly fundamental problem. Many forecasters, this being 3 years ago, were still learning what social media was. There was an uncomfortableness with how to use the site, with communicating with people in real time, or even seeing its usefulness. With that challenge, it became apparent that it's not always practical to just throw people into social media and let them get used to it as they go. So they worked on a way to help their coworkers become more comfortable with Twitter and how it works. It also let them practice communicating with the public just like you would during an event. Built in Google Sheets, they had effectively created an imperfect but usable Twitter simulator. It was pretty neat stuff. There have been a few offices that have led the pack in their social media use, and Norman was and still is one of them. The benefit of their social media activity were recognized in the service assessment that covered the week of tornadoes and flash flooding in their area received in 2013. Inspired by their work, the assessment recommended that training should be created to highlight best practices so all offices could benefit from our collective knowledge. I was handed that assignment to create those lessons upon being hired at WTD and released those lessons at this conference 2 years ago in Raleigh. To my knowledge, it was the first time social and behavioral science was incorporated into a national level Weather Service training course, and some of the practices that were recommended in that training were reflected in the previous presentation. Well, that Twitter simulator Jonathan and Michael created at the Norman office has since been adapted by Matthew Dukes in the Rapid City Forecast office. He has continued to develop it and runs simulations twice a year to work on the various ways you can message during severe weather and winter weather events. Everyone fairly well knows the software by now, but if it's been 6 months since you last worked a winter event, it's good to become ready for that upcoming season again. This is the same reasoning why my group, WDTD, has developed a broader seasonal readiness training program. So, his Twitter simulator remains useful, but sitting in Google Sheets, it's still an imperfect platform for doing this kind of work. At this time, I'm afraid we've kind of stagnated in our social media advancement. I do perceive we've got the basics down as an agency, and sure, we're still concerned about how we communicate to the public. So we've got big projects going on right now that we'll hear about over the next 2.5 days. But social media's shiny new toy status has definitely been handed over to the awesomeness that is Ghost 16. Even if it's not the shiny new toy, though, social media remains a big deal operationally, and we need to look at what our next step forward will look like. So I've been working over the last 2 years to take Norman and Rapid City's Twitter simulation idea and implement it into a browser to make it look and function more like Twitter, which, by the way, is what you have been watching. And the reason I did this is because, well, a Twitter simulator is itself not the next big thing, but the ability to utilize a well-developed Twitter simulation tool into our training, decision support, and research to operations will be important for the National Weather Service's communication efforts moving forward. Let's look into each of these. From the training perspective, practicing in a safe environment to build experience before going live is the big benefit that simulation tools provide. As an analogy, my coworkers at the Warning Decision Training Division developed and continue to maintain the Weather Event Simulator, or WES-2. Built to resemble the AWIPS-2 software used in the Weather Service, the WES-2 is a simulation tool we use to build warning creation experience in the warning environment. A Twitter simulator like this one would build communication experience in the warning environment. I've already mentioned the need for offices to prepare for an upcoming season, like what Matthew Dukes' Rapid City office continues to work on. Honing communications between the social media desk and the warning forecaster is also an important but unpracticed interaction. Also, consider the following situation. When new interns are hired, they are at the low end of the totem pole. You may not go through our Radar and Applications course to get training on issuing warnings for up to a year. So during an event, you probably won't be working on the warning desk, and chances are someone more senior than you will be handed the meso-analysis and coordinator positions. Thus, the majority of interns work the communication and social media desk a lot during big weather events. Now, this is seen as an advantage because these kids grew up with social media, but while they may know how to run their own personal account, there is no training to date on running an organization's account. The saying goes that we're always one tweet away from a PR disaster. So far, we have avoided a true United Airlines and Samsung-sized PR problem because most people either know who the Weather Service is and like us, or they don't know that we exist. The number of people who know about the Weather Service and truly dislike us is really very small. But there are still negative comments, complaints, and trolls that we have to respond to appropriately. And beyond even that react or don't react decision is the training on whether to share these tweets with the office, potentially providing a distraction to the warning forecaster. On the positive side of things, our communications as an agency is best when we are empowering people to take proper safety actions. Emphasis on empowering. How do we use social media to increase someone's belief in their ability to get to safety? Is this tweet here an empowering message? There is no active training on what to say that will be empowering, or what to say to a traumatized community. Interns are currently given the responsibility to communicate as our organization to the publics without any active training on how to do that. We have a certain reverence in this agency for the warning button, but we do not have a reverence for the tweet button. Now, things have gone well so far, and the reason that's to nobody's surprise is because we have been acquiring extremely high-quality folks every year. But a Twitter simulator would provide a tool to increase the learning curve of our incoming forecasters by being able to practice this active engagement prior to going live. From the decision support services perspective, a Twitter simulation can also be a tool that helps enhance relationships between the Weather Service and our partners. Last year, the Norman Forecast Office conducted a statewide exercise called the Oklahoma Earth, Wind, and Fire exercise. Their Science and Operations Officer, Todd Lindley, and General Forecaster Jonathan Kurtz showed me how they involved about 110 partners, including surrounding forecast offices, emergency management agencies, and many other government agencies, and they went through a little exercise. They started their morning with a 6.5 magnitude earthquake east of Stillwater, home of Oklahoma State University, which caused an oil storage tank to catch fire and an upstream dam to crack. Bad start to the day. Behind the dry line, a large grass fire began in Altus in the southwest. Ahead of the dry line, thunderstorms erupted in the moderate risk area, resulting in baseball-sized hail and a tornado around Tulsa. By the way, a flash flood emergency was also issued after the dam completely failed. In the afternoon, the winter storm watch in the Panhandle was updated to a winter storm warning, and a second fire broke out west of Lawton in the southwest. This is clearly a situation that required an extensive coordination effort, and they ran programs to simulate their direct EOC and NWS chat messages. While it's true that only something like 20% of partners like this have Twitter accounts in Oklahoma, these are some of the bigger cities here. Many of these partners would be sending out information, but they didn't have a tool to simulate their Twitter accounts, so there was no way to practice consistent outgoing communication. There was also no way for one partner to see from another partner to see a tweet from another partner and feel the need to get more information about what they had just communicated. Todd and John indicated they would be very interested in incorporating a tool like this in the future when it can be implemented, because it would only serve to enhance their partner relationships. Looking at the research to operations arena, the Operations Proving Ground has expressed interest in the Twitter simulator. In a conversation with its director, Kim Runk expressed how the simulator would serve an important function for them in its ability to simulate both the sending and receiving aspects of operational social media. We haven't been able to incorporate it into their evaluations yet, but the interest is there. Looking into the future, we'll hear about the Hazard Simplification Project in tomorrow's last session and the Facets Project in tomorrow's first session. Both are looking in their own ways at improving our watch, warning, and advisory products. When these changes are made, the idea is that the structure of these products will help us communicate in a way that empowers the publics to get to safe places. But both will have to grapple with the means through which information is delivered. The broadcasters in the room will certainly be thinking about the televised broadcast medium, and of course they also want to consider social media. The plans on exactly how that research is going to be conducted have not been formed yet, but that's okay. Looking at the 7 facets of facets, work on any one of them does affect the rest, but to overly simplify things, work has been concentrating so far on numbers 1 through 4. The communications of the output that lead to an effective public response is facet number 6. So it's okay that they aren't there yet, but when those plans are being made, my hope is that a Twitter simulator tool like this one will be ready to help their research to operations efforts. To sum up, all of us are trying to improve how we meteorologists communicate to the publics. New products and new product structures should give us a leg up, but new products must be met with appropriate words and actions in the moment by trained individuals. And, as Rich Grum once asked me, how does the Weather Service get prepared for a time in the future when social media truly gets huge? Huge in a way that makes our current social media following look small. To help us, I believe that a Twitter simulator like the one I'm showing here would prove to be a valuable tool moving forward in our own training, in enhancing our relationship with partners, and in our research operations efforts moving forward. Thank you.